There are moments in life when everything looks the same, but somehow it all feels different. You walk through familiar rooms, talk to familiar people, repeat the same words, yet it's as if you're watching your own life from somewhere outside it. You can see yourself going through the motions, but the meaning feels just slightly out of reach. It's like slipping out of a costume everyone else still believes you're wearing. And in that strange distance between who you were and who you're becoming, there's both a quiet grief and a quiet freedom. The odd thing about growing up is that we think it stops once we become adults. But the truth is, we never stop growing. The body might stop getting taller, but the inner self keeps expanding, stretching beyond everything it once knew. And that's where it gets tricky, because society doesn't really know how to handle that kind of change. The world around you says, stay the same. Be who we expect you to be. But life never listens to those rules. It flows like water moving through a river. And when the river bends, the water doesn't resist. It simply turns. When you resist that same movement within yourself, when you cling to an old version of who you were, you begin to feel tension. Something deep inside you aches. You sense that you're betraying something invisible but essential. Maybe you've felt it already. The music that once stirred your heart now feels flat. The dreams that once drove you start to lose their color. You go back to the places you loved, and somehow they feel smaller. You've outgrown the language of your old life. It's like returning to your childhood home years later. The furniture is still there. The walls still hold your memories, but it no longer fits who you are. And this is what awakening feels like. Your awareness begins to stretch beyond the limits of your identity. The world that used to feel vast suddenly looks like a set on a stage. And that's not something to fear, it's something to honor. The discomfort comes when you think you should still belong to that smaller world. You tell yourself, I should still love this. I should still feel that spark. But you can't, because you're no longer the person who could. We humans often confuse familiarity with truth. If something feels familiar, we think it must be right. But everything true in life begins as unfamiliar, because it's new. Even breathing was once unfamiliar. Falling in love was unfamiliar. Every real form of growth feels that way. So the challenge is not to force yourself back into what feels safe, but to sit quietly in the unknown. To rest in that in-between space where the old no longer fits, but the new hasn't yet appeared. It's uncomfortable, yes, because you can't explain it to anyone. If you tried, you'd say, the person you think I am is dissolving, and they'd probably look at you strangely. But that's all right. Most people spend their lives trying not to experience that dissolution. We tell ourselves we must be consistent, that we must have a fixed identity, a clear direction, a steady purpose. We build little boxes for ourselves and call them who I am. And then we guard those boxes as if they're our homes. But life, in its quiet wisdom, keeps shaking the box. It whispers, "Come out." Thought was the world, was just the part you could see at the time. The world itself expands as your perception expands. Think of a fish living in a bowl. To the fish, that bowl is the entire universe. Then, one day, it's placed in a pond. At first, it panics. The walls that once defined its safety are gone. But soon, it starts to explore and discovers that the pond had always been there. It simply couldn't see beyond the glass. That's what happens when your awareness grows. The bowl breaks, and at first you think you've lost everything. But in truth, you've gained the world back. The challenge is that no one teaches you how to live once your old meanings stop working. So, for a while, you feel lost. You might think you're going backward, but you're not. Feeling lost is often the sign that you're moving closer to what's real. Because before you can find truth, you have to let your illusions fall away. In nature, every transformation looks like an ending. The seed must break to become a tree. The caterpillar must dissolve to become a butterfly. Night must fall before dawn can rise. And so it is with you. The parts of yourself that no longer serve your growth begin to fade, sometimes with pain, sometimes with peace, but always with purpose. People often ask, how do I know if I'm growing or just restless? The difference is subtle. Restlessness wants to escape. Growth wants to understand. Restlessness says, I can't stand this. Growth says, this no longer fits who I am. Restlessness looks for distraction. Growth looks for depth. Real growth doesn't come from rejection, it comes from understanding. You don't leave the old world in anger. You leave it in gratitude. You see it clearly, thank it for what it taught you, and move on. You stop blaming those who still live in that smaller world, because you remember you once did too. And with that understanding comes a deeper love, a softer heart. The world you've outgrown isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. And the sadness that lingers afterward isn't sorrow. It's gratitude for something that nourished you long enough to help you grow. Many people misunderstand awakening. They imagine it means constant happiness or permanent peace. But awakening isn't escape, it's clarity. It's not rising above humanity. It's embracing it fully. You still feel everything: joy, sorrow, confusion, but you stop resisting it. You stop mistaking your passing emotions for who you are. And when that happens, the same world that once felt too small starts to glow again. Not because it changed, but because you did. You walk the same streets, meet the same faces, yet everything feels lighter, more transparent. You see the dance instead of the struggle. You stop seeing people as obstacles and start seeing them as reflections of the same life moving through you. But you can't force this awareness. You can only notice when the old shell has cracked and stop pretending it hasn't. The rest unfolds naturally, like a river that flows because it must. When you stop clinging to your old story, a vastness opens inside you. The fog begins to lift. You realize the world isn't happening outside you, it's happening through you. That's why it feels so strange when you outgrow it. It's not the world that's changing it, your way of seeing it. So instead of asking, what's wrong with everything, you begin to ask, what is awakening within me? And that question changes everything. Confusion turns into curiosity. Loneliness turns into space. Silence turns into peace. And you begin to notice that life itself is intelligent, that it knows how to unfold without your control. The tree doesn't struggle to grow. It just grows. The ocean doesn't try to move. It moves. The stars don't plan to shine. They simply shine. And you are no different. So, don't fear outgrowing your world. Don't clip your wings to make others comfortable. Let the winds of change lift you. Let the seasons within you turn. Because one day you'll see that nothing was truly left behind. It all transformed as you did. The world expands to the size of the soul that sees it. When you start to sense that you've outgrown the world, something else becomes clear. You can't go back. Not because anyone is keeping you out, but because the version of you that belonged there no longer exists. And that realization can be unsettling, because we've been taught that progress should bring more comfort, not less. But true awakening does the opposite, leads you into uncertainty, into openness, into a belonging that has nothing to do with fitting in. You realize that belonging, isn't something the world gives you, it's something you remember within yourself. It's the quiet recognition that you were never separate to begin with. Life wasn't something happening to you. But that's a hard truth to accept, because we've spent our lives believing we're isolated fragments floating in our own skins. So, when that illusion begins to fade, we panic. We ask, if I'm not this person, if I'm not this role, who am I? And that question, uncomfortable as it is the doorway. Because truth only enters when your old answers stop working. But life isn't a definition, it's a process, a movement, a mystery unfolding. The moment you try to define yourself, you limit the wonder that you are. It's like trying to hold the wind in your hand. You can't. You can only feel it move through you. And that movement is you. When people begin to awaken, they often feel lost, but they're not losing themselves. They're losing the story they were never meant to carry. They're shedding the ideas and fears that shaped their identity. And what's left is something simple and radiant: awareness itself. Awareness has no shape, no history, no age. It's the space where everything comes and goes: thoughts, emotions, people, places. They appear, they vanish, but the awareness watching it all remains. It's the same awareness you had as a child, just filled with new experiences. So, when you outgrow the world, you're not becoming better or more spiritual. You're remembering what's always been true, that you were never the world, but the consciousness through which it appeared. And that realization doesn't make you superior, makes you humble. Because you see that every person, every leaf, every breath shares that same awareness, expressed through countless forms. At that point, you stop needing to prove anything. You stop arguing with reality. You stop trying to make life fit your expectations. You realize it already does. It always has. It's like rowing upstream in a river that's already carrying you home. The moment you stop fighting, you see that you were never off course. The mind doesn't like this sithing. Surrender means defeat. But surrender isn't giving up. It's waking up. It's realizing you were never separate from the flow. Breathing happens without your effort. Life lives itself through you in the same way. The more you trust it, the more gracefully it moves. And maybe that's what outgrowing the world really means: not leaving it, but seeing it differently. Seeing it as play, as rhythm, as a divine game. When you see life that way, the heaviness falls away. You stop trying to solve it and start dancing with it. Life was never a puzzle to complete, it's a song to be lived. Every moment is a note in that melody, forever changing, forever new. The past is gone. The future doesn't exist, yet there's only this living moment, endlessly unfolding. And when you awaken, you realize you are not separate from that unfolding. You are it. And maybe that's what scares us most, that we're not spectators of life, but participants in it. To participate means letting go of control. It means trusting the unknown. It means loving without conditions, laughing without reason, crying without shame. But the more deeply you surrender, the more natural it becomes. You start to feel that the same energy moving the stars is moving through you. The silence between your thoughts is the same stillness between waves. You realize there was never a you and a world. There was only the dance. And when that becomes clear, life feels effortless again, because it's easy, but because you've stopped fighting it. You can walk through chaos and remain calm inside. You can lose everything and still feel whole, because what you truly are can't be lost. It's like realizing you're the screen, not the movie. The scenes change, characters appear and disappear, but the screen remains untouched. And once you know yourself as that screen, you can enjoy the movie fully, even the sad parts, because you know they're not final. You can laugh and cry at the same time. That's real freedom, not the freedom of getting what you want, but the freedom of no longer needing to. So when you feel distant from the world, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. That distance isn't separation, it's space where awareness recognizes itself. And in that stillness, something beautiful happens. You realize that all your searching, all your growing, all your outgrowing were never about reaching somewhere else. They were about remembering what you've always been. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear it, the soft laughter of the universe, amused by its own game. You pretending to be you, me pretending to be me, until the remembering begins. And when you remember, there's nothing left to outgrow, because you see that life, death, rising, falling, they're all movements of the same ocean. You were never the wave, you were always the water. And when you see that the world doesn't disappear, shines, every leaf, every sound, every ordinary moment glows with quiet wonder. You realize you were never lost, you were being remade. You weren't breaking down, you were breaking open. And one day, without effort, you'll look around, and everything will fit again. Not because it's gone back to how it was, but because you've grown large enough to hold it all. That's when you know you've come home. Not to a place, but to a seeing, stillness that's been waiting for you all along. And in that stillness, you finally understand you never really outgrew the world. You simply awakened to the truth that you were never separate from it.